Welcome to Reality, the show for teens, by teens, about teens. I'm JK, and I'm not kidding, and I'm your host. The transition from high school to college is one of the most difficult periods of a teenager's life. However, millions of American teenagers have to make the transition every year. So, to help us make this transition as easy as it could possibly be for our teenager viewers, I am joined today by Tina Giel, a freshman at Adelphi University. Tina, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So Tina, you are a freshman in college right now, so you just made the transition about, 7-8 months ago. Tell us about your experience transitioning from high school to college.
College is very different. I wouldn't say that it's more difficult necessarily than high school, but it's definitely a lot of things that you wouldn't normally expect. High school, you're doing a lot of different subjects that you're not necessarily wanting to learn. College is very more concentrated on stuff that you like.
Okay. So, looking at the transition from high school to college, what was probably the most difficult thing for you when moving from high school to college?
The most difficult thing for me was probably time management, because a lot of the teachers don't give you homework or assignments every single day. They'll give you an assignment and say, okay, this is due in 1 or 2 weeks, and then your other professors are going to do the exact same thing. So you have to know how to manage your time so that you're not left with everything at the last minute.
All right. And you're also a commuter for college. You're not dorming there. Do you think that makes it easier for you since you also commuted to high school, or do you think it makes it harder because you're more independent?
I think that commuting and dorming both have their pros and cons. As a commuter, I lose a lot of time in my day commuting to and from school, but at the same time, I don't have to make that adjustment, doing things on my own, living on my own, doing my own laundry, that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, since you're commuting, you're living at home, you lived at home throughout all of high school. What do you think is the most striking difference between, your independence that you had in high school and your independence that you have in college?
I think I definitely go a lot more places than I used to, because now that I have a car to travel to college in, I'm going a lot of places, and maybe in high school I needed my mom to drive me places because I didn't have my license yet, so that's definitely a big difference.
Awesome. Now today we are covering some tips to transition into college easily. So let's go to our first page, which are all academic tips. I think that it's important to focus on the academics because high school and college, they are school, you're not just partying. So our first tip that we have is to get organized. Do you have any methods that you used when you were transitioning that helped you get organized more easily?
One of my biggest organization tips is to use the planner. Usually colleges give you a planner to use throughout the year, and it's definitely very helpful. You can keep track of all your club meetings, all your assignments, everything like that.
Okay. So you used a planner. When you were moving to be a commuter, were there any things that you had to fix, like your work ethic, your work schedule, the way that you did your assignments?
I think so, definitely, because there might be some assignments that you can really only do in, on campus or, only at home, because maybe, maybe you don't have a printer at home, so you need to do all your stuff that you need to print out at school, but then maybe you need materials from your house to do homework there, so you have to, like I said, manage your time and know, what you have to do when and all of that.
Awesome. Our second tip is to find the ideal place to study. Now, I guess when you're in high school, you either study at your high school or you study at home. Now that you are in college, what are some places that you found that make it easier for you to study?
Most of the time I study in the same place as I used to in high school, which is my bedroom. Recently, I've been doing a lot more studying in the library. I know a lot of people sometimes they have commuter lounges if you're a commuter. Some people go to the cafe, maybe have a coffee or a drink while they're doing their work. It's definitely a lot different than high school.
Cool. Now, next one is go to class. In high school, at least I don't really have an option as to whether or not I go to class. You're locked in there from 8:05 to 3:10 every afternoon. Do you think it's important to go to class?
I definitely think it's important to go to class, besides the fact that a lot of professors take off points if you miss a certain amount of classes. Even if that's not the case, sometimes it's just not enough to be looking at your textbook and doing the assignments. You really need the lectures because, you might miss something important that the professor might say that the material might not cover.
Aye. Now, have you ever had a class so far in college? I mean, you've only had 2 semesters, but have you had a professor for a class that has told you flat out he doesn't care whether or not you show up to class or anything as long as you come in for the tests and you do well?
I personally have not, but I've heard stories.
You've heard stories, okay. So, go to class.
Definitely.
And our last academic tip is to meet your academic advisor. Now, let's start with high school. Did you have an academic advisor in high school?
I didn't.
Okay. So an academic advisor in college, can you explain what that is to me?
For me, the academic advisor would be the person that approves all of the courses that I want to take for the upcoming semester. And they advise me on, what I should be taking, when I should be taking it, all that kinds of stuff. I think it's definitely very useful, but I think you also need to put your part in when you're meeting with your academic advisor, because going in to meet with your advisor without knowing what you're doing or having any questions, sometimes they don't know how to help you. So you have to know what you're going into before you meet with them also.
Okay. So you say that when you're meeting with your academic advisor, it shouldn't necessarily be in a certain time frame, like every 2 weeks. It should just be whenever you need help, because that's what they're there to do. Awesome. All right, getting our academics out of the way. Next up, we've got the big change. Now, going from high school to college is one of the biggest changes someone could ever get. It's almost an independence shock right there. So the first one is to go to all of the orientations. Well, in high school, you also have orientations, mostly just at the beginning of freshman year. But these orientations are supposed to, get you involved in the school. Now, what is a college orientation like?
Well, I know that some colleges only have day-long orientations. Mine was actually 3 days long, and we dormed for those nights. What basically the orientation entailed was you go and, you do a lot of fun activities. A lot of it is not serious at all. But then you also have to, watch presentations on different departments, and you have to choose and register for your classes and all that sort of stuff. But I really think orientation is more important for other things besides just your academics, because you're making friends during orientation. It's a time where you don't have to go to class. You're definitely you have a lot of the free time that you don't get during the year. So you should take advantage of that. But on top of that, it also gives you the chance to learn your campus and, so you know your way around before the first day.
Those all sound like good things to me. Now, next up is to get involved on campus. Now, I guess colleges have clubs. They've got classes that you register for, whatever you want to take a class in. What are some ways that you have found that you can get involved?
Me personally, I'm part of the psychology club at Adelphi University. I'm a psych major, so that was really the only club that I was interested in, but I definitely love it. So I think that you shouldn't get involved just for the sake of getting involved, but you really should find your place in campus and, do what you love.
All right. Now, do you think there's other ways to get involved besides being in clubs, like, maybe help plan some party for the school, maybe help work at orientation? What are some other ways you can get involved?
You could work at orientation. You could join a sorority or fraternity. You could do community service. You could join, some sort of student council or student government, that sort of thing. There are a lot of ways. I think everyone could definitely find their thing.
That's good. And then last, it says, ask for help if needed. Now, I think that kind of goes back to the academic advisor. You said, only go to them when you have questions. But who are some other people that you can ask for help if you might not be able to go to your academic advisor?
I think definitely your professors. A lot of colleges, I know that a lot of people say that, the professors maybe don't care. But I don't think that's true. I think that they're really there to help you. They're not just there to teach you. So the professors are definitely people that you can go to for help. Also, there's always going to be a student counselor there, so that's always someone that you can rely on.
Cool. Now, what are some situations that you might need to go to someone for help?
Well, for example, if you're going to the counselor, maybe, the transition is tough from high school to college. So if you're just not adjusting well enough, that's definitely a reason to be going to the counselor. Even if you just want some snippet of advice, you can go to your professor about it. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. I know mine wouldn't. Like I said, you could go to your academic advisor.
Cool. All right, next up, we've got your social life. Now, this is a big thing in college. Colleges have parties, colleges have friend groups, and since you're having an independent life as an adult for the first time in your life, you really do want to develop a friend group that relates to you in some way. So the first point of your social life is to make connections with students in your classes. So you seem like a pretty friendly person. You must have a bunch of friends at your college. Tell me about how you can make friends in your classes.
What I normally did, when I first get to my classes is, you just see who's around you, who you're sitting with. Sometimes you don't know anyone in your classes, so you just kind of sit in a random seat. So you could just turn to the person next to you and just start asking them questions, say, hey, what class are you in? Are you a freshman, a sophomore, so on? What are you majoring in? What are your interests? And usually it just gets a conversation going.
Awesome. Now the next point I think is a really important point. It says, make new friends, but keep the old. Now, I don't think this is just about friends. I think this is just about connections that you have in general. Now, the connections that you make in high school with your high school teachers and with your high school friends are some of the strongest ones you'll ever have. You want to talk about keeping connections?
Definitely. I still have my friends from high school. I still keep in touch with them, hang out. I do my best to balance old friends with new friends. Like you said, it's not just friends that you have to keep in mind. It's also, the adults in your life, maybe in high school, like the faculty members at your high school. For example, my social studies teacher and my homeroom advisor in high school, I keep in touch with her now, and we're both helping each other out at the moment because she has a day where her babysitter can't babysit, so I fill in. So I'm babysitting for her, but she's also letting me observe her child for my developmental psychology course. So it kind of helps to keep the connection so you have someone there.
That's awesome. Now, what are some good reasons to keep the connections with the people that you have from high school?
Well, it's on top of just building a network, you also don't want to just drop a friend that you have because, you made new friends or something. Those people maybe have been there for you all 4 years of high school, so if they're good people, why should you just drop them?
That's a good point. Now, I know my sister personally is away at college. She's 2 hours north of here. You happen to be very good friends with her. How do you maintain a friendship with someone who is so far away when you're both in college, you're both busy people?
Well, it's a lot easier now with the technology that we have. You can text, you can make calls, you can video chat. So that definitely helps a lot. Just keeping in touch and, making the effort to see each other and talk to each other, that's all that really matters.
The effort is the best thing that you could have. And then the last one is to join an organization. Now that also goes back to, join a club in college and everything. But like you said, making connections with your teacher, that's kind of an organization in itself. You're using her kid for your psych class. What are some organizations, maybe outside of school, that you think would be important for people to be involved in?
Well, sometimes, there might be extracurricular activities such as sports or physical activities. Like I know some people who, outside of school, they do something like karate or, yoga, something that they enjoy that maybe your school doesn't necessarily offer.
Okay. Now, another big thing about going to college is, in America, the voting age is 18. I think that being in an organization, registering to vote, that's a very important step in your life. Do you think that it's an important thing to, join a party almost like that? Would that help kids possibly move into their adult life quicker?
I think it's important to be educated on issues such as that. I don't think there's a big rush to do anything. Like, once you get to college, you're already making all these big changes. There's no rush to have to change everything all at once, But I definitely think at some point that's something to think about.
Awesome. Join an organization, keep your friends. Sounds good. All right, next up we've got stay healthy. Now, this is very important. So, you're healthy, you play sports, you like sports, clearly. The first point that we have is to eat right and sleep well. Now, with college classes, I'm sure that they could be at all times in the day. How do you make your sleep schedule around them?
Well, what I try to do is I try to make my schedule, usually you have choice in your classes, I try to make my schedule so that there aren't too many breaks in between, I get it all done at once. That way, after classes, I have time to eat, do homework, sleep as I please. I don't have to worry about, I can't take a nap because I have a class in an hour and a half and it's just inconvenient for me. So you have to think about that, think ahead.
Okay. And then it also says, eat right. Now, I don't want to stereotype or anything, but usually college students don't have the luxury of grocery stores right on their college campus or anything. What are some methods to eat healthy while you're on the go in college?
I would just encourage people to avoid eating fast food, eating out so much. Even if you don't have, all the choices that you might have if you're dorming, with your, what you would have with your parents, I would really just encourage, maybe cooking food for yourself. And, if you think it's like weird or something, you could always ask a friend if she wants to join you in making a meal.
That's pretty cute, like a little dinner date with your friends.
Yeah.
All right, next up is to get plenty of fresh air and exercise. Now, I think this one is really important for people who dorm, because once you're dorming, you're hanging out with your friends, you're literally having an eternal sleepover with your friends. What are some ways that you could force yourself to get outside and exercise?
Well, I know that colleges have gyms. They have, tracks. You could go for a run. You could do whatever. I think it's a little intimidating doing that sort of stuff alone. So maybe like finding your roommate or a friend and asking them if they want to go for a walk even, or, hit the gym or go for a jog. That's definitely something that you can do.
Sounds pretty good. And then the last one is to learn to take time for yourself. Now that is possibly the best advice I've ever heard for a college student. I know when you're a college student, I'm not a college student yet, but when you're a college student, I've heard stories that you get so overwhelmed with everything. You're meeting new people, you're meeting new adults, you're making new connections, you're losing old connections. Sometimes it's good to just push everything out and take a breath for a second. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I definitely take my daily dose of Netflix when I'm too stressed. I definitely think that you need to take time for yourself, because otherwise you just wear yourself out and, you end up not being able to do the things that you're supposed to. So even just quick breaks here and there, if you're doing homework, you just should get up, stretch, maybe have a snack or something, take a drink of something. That definitely goes a long way.
Sounds awesome. Now, safety first. Now, this is all over the news recently with colleges not being safe enough for people, and it's 100% true. Colleges need to be as safe as they can. You're literally keeping a bunch of kids, young adults, in one confined area for 4 years of their life. So before we even get into the points, what are some things that students need to just be aware of when they're going to college?
They need to be aware that, I'm not trying to be pessimistic here, but, there might be people that just aren't out for their best interests, so they really need to be independent and look after themselves instead of expecting people to look after them.
That's great. All right, now going into our points, the first one is stay alert at parties. Now, I'm not going to condone underage drinking or underage illegal activities, but the fact is it happens. Parties are super popular among colleges. There's always the top 10 biggest party colleges lists. But at these parties, there are, normal college students going to them. But how can you stay alert at these parties? Be able to pick out the bad people from the good people?
I think you should definitely just keep your surroundings in check. You don't want to be going anywhere with anyone alone that you don't know. You really should stay with your friends. Just go with your instincts. That's really all it takes.
Instincts are good. Now, next up is go and leave with a friend you trust. Now, when you're in college, the first, 3-4 months, no one there is someone that you're especially close to. You're just meeting everyone. Do you have a point at which you learn to trust someone enough that you could trust them with your safety, possibly even your life?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I think that at some point you kind of just have to trust them even if you don't know them that well. That's why it is important to make friends so early on, as soon as you get to your classes, because you want to get to know these people, you want to spend time with them, get to know them, make sure that they're safe people to be around.
Okay. And then last, it says learn your way around campus. Now, some campuses are extremely small. They're like 400 kids who are all commuters. But even your college is huge. These campuses are only getting bigger. How do you think you could learn to get around a campus as quickly as possible so you don't run into any mishaps?
Well, like I said before, it's definitely very smart to learn while you're at orientation, because that gives you a lot of free time. Even if you have a lot of stuff to do during the day, you're usually free to do whatever you'd like at night. So you can walk around with your friends, learn where all the buildings are. That's definitely a good way to find your way around campus.
Great. And now our final thoughts. The first one is to not make hasty decisions about a career or major. Now, when you're young, you really don't have that much time to decide what you want to do with your life. You almost have to get right on it. But when you get right on it, you might be wrong about it. You might not realize that you have a passion about it. Have you ever experienced a time where you weren't sure about what you wanted to do?
Definitely. I've always liked psychology, but I've recently been thinking about double majoring. So what I've done is I found that, you have a lot of room in your schedule for electives, so you could take a course here or there in different things and see what you're interested in. So this semester I'm taking the Intro to Accounting class. I've learned, don't like accounting so much. Next semester I'm going to try out a criminal justice class, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll be more into that.
That's awesome. So one of your tips would be try to use almost one class a semester just as a little elective to see what you like?
Definitely.
That sounds really good. Next is we've got to be prepared to feel overwhelmed. Now, I think that this is a pretty big point because the whole point of the transition from high school to college being so difficult is that you are going to be overwhelmed. Have you felt overwhelmed since you've gone into college?
Oh, definitely. Sometimes, the end of a semester is creeping up on you and you have all these final papers due. And like I said, time management is definitely a big thing that you have to keep in mind. But just realizing that you have a lot to do and even just being aware and knowing about it, you are already one step ahead than the person who maybe just doesn't even care about their work and, doesn't even think that anything's a problem. Okay.
Now, the stress from high school classes and everything, how do you think that compares to college classes? I mean, the schedule is completely different, but class is class.
I think in college you have a lot more time on your hands since you're not spending as much time in class as you are in high school. But again, you have a lot more papers and longer papers. And like I said, you need to manage your time because, you won't necessarily have something that's due the next day or the next 2 days. It might be something that's due weeks from now.
All right. And then the last one is to explore new subjects so you can learn. So you have the whole tip as to, taking a new class every semester here and there. But what if you're in a major that you really don't have that opportunity? What are some other ways that you could learn more about things that you might end up liking?
Well, you could definitely join clubs. I know there are a lot of academic clubs, like I'm in psychology club. So even if there was someone who maybe she was a nursing major and she didn't have that much time on her hands to take electives, but she thought she might be interested in psychology, she could join psychology club to learn about it.
That's awesome. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left now. I just want to talk to you kind of personally. Your college experience seems to be going very well. You love where you are. You love commuting. Why do you think you decided to commute compared to dorming?
Well, I live close by to Adelphi, and I just, my parents offered to pay for my tuition, so I didn't want to, burden them too much on, having to pay the extra thousands of dollars on dorming. It's just not practical at all, especially if I only live 25 minutes away from the school by car. It's really not a big problem to be driving there to and from.
Oh, definitely. But did you ever think about dorming while you were on the college search?
Oh, definitely. I was open to dorming. I applied to colleges as far away as, Buffalo, so that definitely would have had to be a dorming school.
You can't really commute 8 hours to Buffalo every day. Now, transitioning from high school to college, you said that the hardest thing was time management. Were there any things that you were surprised at how easy they were? Like people overestimated them for you?
I don't think so. I mean, you really do have to keep on top of everything. You can't just be, idling around.
I gotcha. Now, up until now, we've kind of focused on the college side of the transition. Going back to high school, senior year is, filled with prom and graduation, all these fun events. But how are you able to manage your time wisely in senior year? Did you have a schedule?
Well, like I said before, I used my planner a lot because even my high school gave out planners. Another thing to do is, I know as high school seniors you're procrastinating a lot because school's almost over and you don't have the motivation to do much, but you really should keep on top of things because sometimes colleges do see that, if you slack off towards the end, and they can retract their acceptance letters and all that. So you just really have to keep pushing through and not stopping with working hard.
All right. Now, transitioning from high school to college, the summer between the two of them, that's when the transitioning happens, basically. Do you have any tips as to what you should be preparing over that summer, what you should be doing over that summer for a high school student?
I don't think there's really much you could be doing over the summer because I think you choose your courses, at orientation usually. I mean, that is over the summer, but you don't really have to do that on your own. You're with advisors and you're with your peers, so you don't even have to really worry about that so much. I'd say that summer in between, just have fun and, live it up, because I know sometimes high school, it could be difficult in between school years. You get a lot of homework in between sometimes. I'm not sure how college summers are going to be like, but I just would, keep it up and have fun.
Have fun, nice. Now, there's a lot of problems in both high school and college, but the transition between them is clearly difficult but manageable. You've been able to manage it just fine. Now, there's a lot of problems in high school, such as bullying. Do you think that things like that are as big in college and you might be able to understand them more easily in college because you're more mature?
I think they're definitely not as much of a problem. I think a lot of people mature very well during or before college. They realize that they're surrounded by adults now, it's not like little kid games anymore. They really have to be adult-like in their situations and their issues. They can't just be, gossiping or, obviously that stuff is going to happen because it's going to happen everywhere, but I definitely think there's less of it in college.
All right. Now, we've got about, a minute left now. Do you think that there's anything that high school students could do specifically just to mature their personality just a little bit while they're transitioning to college?
I would just stay open to everything, like every opportunity that comes to you. You don't want to close yourself off too much because college is about learning. It's about new experiences. You want to make new friends, learn new things. So my biggest tip would just be to keep yourself open to all those opportunities.
Open to opportunities. Thanks, Tina. Today we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the transition from high school to college, how difficult it could be, but how maybe a little bit of time management and a little bit of maturing could make all the difference. Hopefully Tina was able to give you some great tips as to how we could achieve this. Tina, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This has been Reality. Thanks for watching.